Hello my kings, queens, and fellow non-binary leaders, and welcome back to Nekima. Today we continue with Trapped in the Past, which is my Oikawa and Kageyama Angst series featuring the ships Daisuke and Tsukiyama Kagina. Oh my god. This is the second part, so please watch the first one for context, and now let's go, enjoy. Haikyuu felt his muscles began to cramp with how tightly he was holding his phone. Still no service or a sign of rescue. It was getting increasingly cold in the room. The game had been in the afternoon, morphing into the early evening. At this point, the sun must begin to set outside. His teeth clenched. Surely their absence had been noticed. Again, his gaze flickered over to Kageyama. How just like him, he had barely moved since they got trapped here. The fallen shelf had obstructed his view of the setter, but nonetheless, he noticed he was shaking. He leaned his head back against the wall a little too rapidly. It hurt. Yet, he could only bear the sight of his former kohai, apparently freezing, for so long. Somehow the fact that he didn't look at him when he got up and peeled off his jacket helped. As he moved closer, the young guy almost looked to be asleep, even while shivering. He looked so much more vulnerable now. He wasn't sure whether that made it either better or worse. Part of him was relieved that the maturity he had proven when talking to him seemed like washed away, but in the grand scheme of things, he only felt all the more horrible for how he had treated him. Tobio. The raven didn't reply. Perhaps he was ignoring him. He deserved it. Hey, You're freezing. Here, take. He tried offering his jacket, but when he touched Kageyama's shoulder, he flinched. At first, it felt like a punch to the gut, but then he realized that Tobio hadn't shrugged him off. His head rolled back against the wall, exposing his face twisted in exhaustion and pain. He was pale and yet sweating. Despite the cold and shaking, his hair was sticky and clung to his forehead as if he had a fever. And worse, his lips seemed awfully pale. Tobio? Oikawa rushed to kneel down next to him and quickly reached out to feel for a fever, but when he placed a hand on the ground to stabilize himself, he felt his stomach turn. Something sticky and still a little warm but beginning to cool clung to it. When he brought it up to his face, it was tainted bright red. His breathing fastened, and he felt nauseous as more of the red began soaking into his pants. His vision blurred as he searched for the source, and he almost vomited as he found a small, slim metal pipe sticking out from Kageyama's side. A small puddle of red had assembled beneath it and drenched the previously white golden jersey in its vicious red. Shit, fuck! He couldn't do anything but curse as he took in the extent of his wound. Quickly and almost without thinking, he pulled his jacket he previously intended to cover Kageyama with around his middle, careful not to move the pipe too much. He tied it as tightly as he could just above the injury before taking off his sweatshirt too, and pressed it to the wound and applied pressure. A weak cry that didn't quite make it into a scream echoed from above, and his head snapped up. Aikiwa's eyes were wide in panic as they met Kageyama's. A hint of relief washed over him at seeing him awake, but more than that, adrenaline began pumping into his veins. Why in the 7 rings of hell didn't you say anything? Disoriented, Kageyama blinked and tried focusing on him. He cried out again, louder this time, when a small movement caused the pipe to shift. God damn it! Tobio, you idiot! He was crying. He hadn't noticed it at first, but rivers of tears made their way down Oikawa's face, and his torso shook with suppressed sobs, while he tried and failed to keep his hands steady. Didn't think you cared. Haikyuu almost laughed out loud in hysteria. Maybe he did. He couldn't tell anymore. Of course I fucking care. Fuck. He attempted to wipe his tears away, forgetting for a second the blood tinting his skin. A new wave of nausea overcame him as he felt its warmth on his cheek. Even if I didn't, what about your boyfriends? Your team? Koshi? He'd never forgive me if I never... He broke out into a sob again as the panic overtook his nervous system. He couldn't panic. He shouldn't panic. Tobiya should. But when he looked up, the other only looked at him confused as before. Yet now that he was closer, Oikawa saw the tears glistening on his skin. His eyes were full of pain. I thought you didn't want to touch me. Not to save your life? Do you think I'm that heartless? Kageyama didn't reply. He tried to shrug his shoulders, but only cried out once more before his muscles went slack. Oikawa was floored. He felt himself spiral and had to bite the inside of his cheek hard until he couldn't just see blood, but also taste it. I wouldn't. I'm not. Maybe I am. If you think that, maybe I truly. But I wouldn't let you. Fuck. You idiot, just survive. Fucking survive. Get out of here, and then you can hate me as much as you want. It'll never be more than I do myself anyway. He was desperately grasping at straws to remain sane. He couldn't lose it now. As much as he hated Kageyama, he hated more what it made of him. A murderer by negligence would not be added to that list. He couldn't bear it if... Why? What? Why do you... I thought you hated me. Another hysterical laugh escaped his throat. It felt like it was burning him. I did. Perhaps I still do. Talking was good. Talking helped. All the things he never wanted anyone to know, least of all Kageyama, poured out of him, and somehow the pain of that kept him grounded enough to continue pressing his hands onto the sickening red while his fingers grew numb. I hated you. Your talent, and even worse, that despite that you were running after me like a lost duckling. I hated that from the moment I saw you, I knew you were, or soon would be, so much better than me. You came onto my court, and you had everything. You would take it away from me if I let you, my safe space, the only space where people trust me, and you didn't even understand. You were so awfully happy and oblivious. You had no right. No idea of the pain I went through, and you had the audacity to look up to me as if you didn't know exactly what you'd become. I didn't. Another bit of laugh escaped him, but he couldn't look at him anymore. Perhaps not, but I did. It was true. And He cried. The words felt like acid on his tongue. I saw your struggles, and I did nothing. I was scared and angry, and that's what I hated most. You are everything I failed at. You brought out what I hated most about myself, and it was so much easier to blame you for this, to hate you because otherwise... A long pause stretched between them, only broken by sobs and cries echoing from the stone walls. I don't... What? He looked up at him confused. I don't hate you. He let out a laugh which was cut short in a gasp for air. Then you're even more of an idiot than I thought. Sugatu, and Iwa, and yeah. He laughed. Them two. All idiots. As the silence returned, Oikawa listened to Kageyama's breaths growing more shallow, and the ice in his veins seemed to grow colder. You gotta stay awake, okay? You don't want me to take your secrets to the grave. Perhaps the earthquake had just been the first sign of the apocalypse, because a world in which Kageyama was joking with him must mean it was about to end. Since when do you know sarcasm? Kay taught me. Something like a smile spread on Oikawa's face. He couldn't believe the situation. It felt like a fever dream. I used to admire you. Oikawa nodded weakly. Yeah, I know. I blew that pretty spectacularly, didn't I? Kageyama gave a short hum of affirmation, and although it stung, Oikawa felt oddly comforted by the honesty. I just never understood why you hated me so much. Then again, I was never good at understanding what people thought of me. It took me a while to figure out you didn't want me around, or the team for that matter. A lump formed in the elder's throat, and he gulped in vain to get rid of it. I told you, it's just... You didn't do anything wrong. The words felt almost physically painful. I did with them. Yeah, I could have helped you, but I was too wrapped up in everything else. I'm... He took a deep breath, feeling the panic constrict his chest. I'm sorry. He didn't know why it felt as though suddenly the rock was pulled from beneath his feet, and he felt the world sway although he was already on the ground. He shook his head violently to regain composure and retain the pressure on Kageyama's wound. I think... He looked at Oikawa with that same look he always had, distant in a way, but not really, like he was trying to comprehend something that was just outside of his reach. I forgive you. He felt the hysteria bubble up inside him once more, because of course he did. He probably still didn't fully understand what had driven him all these years, because even then, or maybe especially then, how could he forgive him? Oikawa knew everything that had brought him to this point, and he was furthest from forgiving or even excusing his actions no matter how much he tried. It all sounded cheap to him. I still admire you as a setter. He let out a huff of disbelief. Why would you? Aren't you much better now? The old bitterness returned to his voice without his consent. Not in the same way. Oikawa kept silent. It wasn't often that he was unsure what to reply, but this was never in a million years a moment he would have willingly prepared for, least of all under these circumstances. He was shaking, unsure whether it was a result of the stress, anxiety, or cold, now that he wore nothing more but a t-shirt on his upper body, most likely a combination of all of the above. The silent prayer he sent to any deity willing to listen for rescue to reach them faster grew in urgency, now no longer driven by mere uncomfortableness, but the very real, very pressing matter of blood seeping from Kageyama's abdominal area. How did this happen? He weakly tried to keep up a conversation, slowly remembering the lessons on first aid their coach always reminded them of, though usually those were focused on twisted ankles, concussions, or injured fingers, common ailments in volleyball, not puncture wounds. He only half listened as Kageyama began to explain in a thin voice how the pipe must have rested on a shelf or been loosely attached to the ceiling and fell as the earthquake hit. His attention was split between the younger setter and any signs of help. Thank you so much for watching to the end. I really appreciate it. I hope you enjoyed this second part. I really like exploring this relationship between Oikawa and Kageyama and their past with the middle school incident and Kitagawa Daichi and everything. It is super interesting. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoyed this part and don't want to miss out on anything in the future, and tell me your favorite moment / quote under the pinned comment. It will mean the world to me, and it really helps me out make better videos for you in the future, as well as any feedback in the comments. A special thanks as always goes out to my new Nikos. They help me so much keeping this channel alive and going, and make sure that I can post and upload as frequently as I do. They also get this stuff like this in advance. This one actually about 2 weeks, so there are good perks to it. Here is more content, check that out if you like. More news about upcoming projects can be found on the Discord, link is in the description. And now I hope you have a wonderful and amazing day. Bye!
Everybody just do your thing. Wake up, today's gonna be a good day. Wake up, today's gonna be a good day. Wake up, today's gonna be